I still remember the exact moment everything broke. You have 24 hours to leave this house. My daughter didn't even raise her voice when she said it. That made it worse. Cold, calm, final. I stood there in the kitchen, my fingers wrapped around a chipped mug of tea that had already gone cold. For a second, I thought I misunderstood her. That maybe I'd heard something else, something less brutal. But then Daniel laughed behind her. Honestly, it's about time, he said. None of my friends even believe you're my real grandma. That was the moment it hit me, not just the words, but the meaning behind them. The quiet agreement between them. The way they looked at me like I didn't belong. I set the mug down slowly, afraid my hands might shake too much if I didn't. Emily, I said, my voice softer than I expected. This is my home too. She let out a short, humorless breath. Your home? Catherine, you've been living here for 3 years without paying anything. 3 years. The way she said my name, not Mom, just Catherine, felt like a door slamming shut. I've been supporting you, she continued. Food, utilities, everything. And what do I get? Complaints. Criticism. That look on your face like you're judging everything I do. I wanted to argue. God, I wanted to remind her of the dinners I cooked every night, the laundry I folded, the mornings I woke up early just to make sure Daniel had breakfast before school. But the words stayed trapped somewhere deep inside me, like they always did. Daniel leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching me like this was some kind of show. It's honestly embarrassing, he added. I can't even invite people over without explaining why you're always here. Always here. I swallowed. Where am I supposed to go? I asked quietly. Emily shrugged. I'm sure you'll figure something out. There are places for people like you. People like me. I almost laughed at that, but there was nothing funny about it. A day isn't enough, I said. I need time. You've had 3 years, she replied immediately. I'm done waiting. Her tone didn't leave room for discussion. This wasn't a fight. It wasn't even a conversation. It was a decision. Daniel pushed himself off the counter, grabbing his phone. Finally, he muttered. Maybe now the house won't feel so weird. I flinched before I could stop myself. Weird. That's what I'd become. Emily noticed. Of course she did. You always do that, she said. Act like everything is happening to you. It's exhausting. I stared at her, trying to recognize the girl I used to know. The little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. The one who used to hold my hand so tight in crowded places, afraid I might disappear. When did she stop seeing me as her mother? When did I become this? I raised you, I said, barely above a whisper. She rolled her eyes. You worked all the time. You were never there. And now you expect me to take care of you because you didn't plan your life properly? That one landed hard. Because it wasn't just untrue, it erased everything I'd done. Every late shift, every missed holiday, every sacrifice I thought mattered. Daniel smirked slightly, clearly entertained. My friend Leo's grandma has her own place, he said. She travels, buys him stuff, takes him places. That's what grandmas are supposed to do. And I'm not. I asked before I could stop myself. He looked at me like I'd asked something stupid. You just live here. Something inside me cracked then. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like a glass finally giving in after too much pressure. Emily checked the time on her phone. I have to leave soon, she said. So, I need you to start packing today. I don't want this dragging out. I understand, I said. And I did. Not the situation, but the truth behind it. I turned and walked to my room, feeling their eyes on my back. I half expected her to call me back, to soften, to say she didn't mean it. She didn't. Behind me, I heard Daniel laugh about something on his phone. The normal sounds of a normal house. A house I no longer belonged to. My room felt smaller than usual when I stepped inside. Or maybe it was just me. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked around slowly. A few photos on the dresser. Some books stacked neatly by the window. A suitcase tucked under the bed that I hadn't used in years. Such a small life, when you looked at it like that. I picked up one of the photos. Emily, maybe 8 years old, smiling so wide it looked like her face might split. She was holding a bicycle, pink, with ribbons on the handles. I remembered how hard I worked to afford that bike. Extra shifts, skipped meals, counting coins at night. And when she saw it that Christmas morning, "You're the best mom ever," she had said, throwing her arms around me. I closed my eyes. Where did that girl go? I set the photo back down carefully. For a long time, I just sat there, staring at nothing, waiting for the familiar feeling to come. The sadness, the helplessness, the quiet acceptance. But it didn't. Instead, something else settled in. Something clearer, colder, stronger. I opened the drawer of my nightstand and reached inside. The folder was still there, exactly where I left it. I pulled it out slowly, running my fingers along the edge. I had kept it for years, hoping I would never need it, hoping things would never get to this point. But now it felt different. I opened it just enough to see the documents inside. Paperwork, contracts, proof, truth. A small, humorless smile touched my lips. They thought I was helpless. They thought I had nothing. They thought I was living in their world under their rules. They had no idea. I closed the folder and held it tightly in my hands. Tomorrow I was supposed to leave this house. Tomorrow I was supposed to walk away quietly like I always did. But tomorrow they were going to learn something. Something I should have shown them a long time ago. I leaned back against the wall, staring at the ceiling as the house slowly fell into silence. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel invisible. I didn't feel like a burden. I felt ready. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of the house that no longer felt like mine, or maybe never had. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Daniel's voice again, sharp and careless. "You're not even my real grandma." Funny how words from a child could cut deeper than anything else. Or maybe not so funny. At some point, I stopped trying to sleep and just thought. Not the usual kind of thinking where I replay everything and blame myself. This time it was different. Clearer. Colder. Like I was finally looking at my life from the outside instead of drowning inside it. 3 years. That's how long I had been here. 3 years since Emily called me late at night, crying so hard I could barely understand her. "Catherine, I don't know what to do. They're going to take the house." I remember sitting on the edge of my old couch, gripping the phone so tightly my hand hurt. She sounded small again, like she used to when she was little and afraid of the dark. "The bank started foreclosure," she said. "I'm behind on everything. I can't fix this." "How much do you need?" I asked without hesitation. I didn't even think about it. I never did when it came to her. "I don't know. I mean, it's a lot. Maybe you could come stay with us for a while. Help out. Just until I get back on my feet." Just until. Those words should have warned me. They didn't. I sold my apartment within 2 months. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Paid off after decades of work. My one piece of independence. Gone. I emptied my savings. Closed accounts I'd built over a lifetime. Even sold things I swore I'd never touch. All for her. And when I moved in, she hugged me at the door like I'd saved her life. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know what I'd do without you." For a while it almost felt right. She was kind, grateful. She asked for my opinion, included me in decisions. Daniel was still sweet back then too, awkward, quiet, but affectionate in his own way. He used to sit next to me on the couch and show me videos on his phone, laughing like he actually wanted me there. I remember thinking, maybe this is what family is supposed to feel like. But gratitude doesn't last long when people get comfortable. It faded slowly, almost invisibly. First, it was little things. Emily stopped saying thank you. Then she stopped asking. Then she started expecting. Dinner wasn't something I offered. It was something I was supposed to do. Laundry wasn't help. It was my responsibility. Cleaning, organizing, errands, all of it quietly shifted onto me without a conversation. And I let it, because I thought that's what love looked like. Then came the rules. Don't use certain dishes. Don't rearrange anything. Don't invite anyone over. Don't make noise late. Don't. I adjusted. I always adjusted. I told myself it was temporary, that she was stressed, that things would get better. But they didn't. They just changed shape. By the end of the first year, I wasn't a guest anymore. I wasn't even family. I was background, something that existed in the house but didn't belong to it. I saw it most clearly in the way she introduced me. "This is my mom," she'd say quickly. "She's staying with us for a while." Always that last part, as if I were something temporary, slightly inconvenient. Never, "This is my mother." Never, "This is Catherine." Just a situation to explain. Daniel followed her lead. Kids always do. At first, it was subtle. Less conversation. Less eye contact. Less warmth. Then came the distance. Then the embarrassment. I remember his birthday when he turned 14. I spent days preparing. Decorations, food, a cake I made from scratch. I even used money I shouldn't have spent just to make it special. And when his friends arrived, he pulled me aside. "Can you just stay in your room?" he said. "I don't want them to think you live here." I nodded. Of course I did. I stayed in that room for 3 hours, listening to laughter from the other side of the door. That was the first time I felt it clearly. That sharp, hollow feeling. Like I had already disappeared, but no one told me. After that, I stopped trying as much. It was easier, safer. If you don't expect anything, you don't get hurt. At least, that's what I told myself. But it wasn't true, because every small moment still hurt. Every dismissive comment. Every ignored question. Every time I was spoken over or about instead of to. And the worst part? I convinced myself it was normal, that I deserved it somehow, that I had failed as a mother, and this was just the result. Lying there in the dark, I realized something. I had spent years shrinking myself to fit into a space that was never meant for me. I made myself smaller, quieter, easier to ignore. And they didn't just accept it. They expected it, encouraged it, relied on it, until I became exactly what they believed I was. A burden. A background character. Someone who could be removed without consequence. I sat up slowly, the weight of that realization settling deep in my chest. "No," I whispered into the darkness. The word felt unfamiliar, but right. I wasn't a burden. I wasn't helpless. And I definitely wasn't powerless. I reached for the folder again, opening it fully this time. The papers inside were neat, organized, undeniable. I ran my fingers over the top document, reading the name printed clearly at the bottom. Mine. A strange calm spread through me. Not anger. Not even satisfaction. Just certainty. For 3 years, I had let them define my place in this house. Tomorrow that would change. Not with shouting. Not with revenge. Just truth. Simple, undeniable truth. I closed the folder again and set it beside me. For the first time that night, I lay back down, not to sleep, but to wait. Morning would come soon enough, and when it did, everything would be different. Morning came quietly, too quietly. Sunlight slipped through the curtains like nothing had changed, like the world hadn't shifted overnight. For a moment, lying there, I almost forgot. But then I heard Emily moving around in the kitchen, quick, impatient movements, cabinet doors opening and closing harder than necessary, and it all came back. Today was the day I was supposed to leave. I sat up slowly, my body calm in a way that felt unfamiliar.
No panique. No dread.
Just focus. The folder was still beside me. I picked it up, held it for a second, then stood. When I walked into the kitchen, Emily didn't look up right away. She was scrolling through her phone with one hand, coffee in the other, already dressed for work. "Good," she said when she noticed me. "You're up. I hope you've started packing." Her tone was casual, dismissive, like we were discussing groceries, not my entire life. I meant what I said yesterday. "I know," I replied. My voice surprised even me.
Steady. Controlled.
Daniel came in a second later, grabbing toast without even glancing in my direction. The normalcy of it almost felt surreal. I walked over to the kitchen island and placed the folder down between us. Emily glanced at it briefly. "What's that?" she asked. "More bills? Because if you think—" "Open it," I said. She frowned slightly, clearly irritated. "Catherine, I don't have time for—" "Open it." Something in my voice made her pause. Daniel looked up too, his expression shifting just a little, curiosity replacing indifference. Emily sighed dramatically, set her phone down, and pulled the folder toward her.
Fine.
"Let's get this over with." She opened it. The first page she saw was the property deed. I watched her face as she read. At first, nothing. Then confusion. Then a flicker of something else. Her eyes moved back to the top of the page. Then down again. Slower this time. "No," she said under her breath. "That's not." She flipped to the next document. Then another. Then another. Her hands started to shake. "What is it?" Daniel asked, stepping closer. She didn't answer. He leaned over her shoulder, reading. I saw the exact moment it clicked for him. "Wait, what?" he said. Emily looked up at me, her face pale. This says." "I bought the house," I said calmly. The words hung in the air like something solid. "No." She shook her head immediately. "That's not possible. This is my house." "You were about to lose it," I interrupted gently. 3 years ago. The bank had already started the process. Her mouth opened, then closed again. "I didn't just help with payments, Emily," I continued. "There were no payments left to help with. The only way to keep this place was to buy it outright." Daniel looked back at the papers, then at his mother. "Mom, is that true?" She hesitated. "I didn't know it was like that." "You didn't ask," I said. She flinched. I reached forward and tapped one of the documents. "My name is on everything. The deed, the mortgage, the insurance, all of it." Silence filled the kitchen. Heavy, unavoidable. "I used my savings," I went on. "Sold my apartment. Everything I had went into this house." Emily sank into a chair like her legs had given out. "But you told me you were just helping." "I was helping," I said. "I just didn't think you needed to know the full extent of it." "Why wouldn't you tell me?" she whispered. "Because I didn't want to make you feel like you owed me," I replied. "I wanted you to feel secure, like it was still your home." Daniel stepped back slightly, like the floor beneath him had shifted. "So this whole time," he muttered. "Yes," I said. "This whole time." Emily ran a hand through her hair, breathing unevenly. "This doesn't make sense," she said. "If that's true, then why would you let me think?" "Because I trusted you," I said simply. That stopped her. I let the silence stretch for a moment before continuing. "I trusted that you would treat me like family, not like a burden. Not like someone you were doing a favor for. Daniel looked down at the floor. Emily's eyes filled with tears, but this time there was no anger behind them. Just shock. And something else. Realization. I didn't know, she said again, weaker now. You didn't want to know, I corrected softly. Another silence. Longer this time. Then I reached forward and closed the folder. Yesterday, I said, you told me I had 24 hours to leave. Emily's head snapped up. I didn't. I was angry. I didn't. You meant it, I said.
She didn't argue.
Daniel shifted uncomfortably. Grandma, I didn't. Yes, you did. I said, not harshly but firmly. You both did. I stood there, looking at them, not with anger, not with hatred, but with a clarity I had never felt before. This is my house, I said. It has been for 3 years. Emily shook her head slowly, like she still couldn't accept it. You can't be serious, she said. You're not actually saying. I'm saying, I interrupted, that if anyone needs to find somewhere else to live, it isn't me. The words landed. Hard. Daniel dropped the piece of toast he was holding. It hit the floor with a soft, forgotten thud. Emily stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. You're kicking us out? She asked. I'm giving you the same courtesy you gave me, I replied. 24 hours. Her face went completely white. Catherine, you can't do that, she said quickly. We have nowhere to go. That's not my problem anymore, I said. The same word she used. She heard it. I saw it in her eyes. Mom, please, she said, her voice breaking now. I didn't mean it. I was stressed. I was just... Yes, you were, I said. And this is the result. Daniel stepped forward, panic finally showing.
Grandma, I'm sorry, okay? I didn't mean what I said.
I was just embarrassed. I finished for him. He swallowed hard. I didn't think. No, I said. You didn't. I picked up the folder again. For 3 years, I continued, I've listened to both of you talk about me like I was in the way, like I was taking something from you, like I should be grateful just to exist here. Emily was crying openly now. I didn't know it was like that, she said again. But it was, I replied. And you knew enough. She reached for the table, gripping it tightly. Please, she whispered. We're family. I paused, looked at her, really looked. Yesterday, I said slowly, you made it very clear that I wasn't. That broke something in her. I could see it. She had no answer.
No argument.
Nothing left. I turned toward the hallway. You have until tomorrow morning, I said. Catherine. I didn't stop. For the first time in years, I didn't stay to fix it. Didn't soften it. Didn't take it back. Behind me, I heard Daniel start to cry. He was still a child, after all. Emily's voice followed, desperate now. Please don't do this. I paused for just a second. Not enough to turn around. Just enough to say, this isn't me doing something to you. Then I kept walking. This is me finally choosing myself. The house felt different the moment the door closed behind them. Not empty.
Free.
It was quiet in a way I hadn't experienced in years. Not the tense silence I'd grown used to, where every sound felt like it might annoy someone, but a calm, open quiet that didn't demand anything from me. I stood in the hallway for a long moment, listening to it, letting it settle into my bones. They had left an hour ago. Emily had tried one last time at the door, her voice softer, almost pleading. Daniel stood behind her, pale and silent, no longer defiant. But even then, there was something in her eyes, something that told me she still didn't fully understand. She thought this was about anger, about punishment, about me making a point. It wasn't. That was the difference. When the car finally pulled out of the driveway, I didn't feel relief right away. I expected something dramatic. Maybe guilt, maybe doubt, but instead there was just stillness. And then clarity. I walked back into the kitchen slowly, looking around like I was seeing it for the first time. My kitchen. The thought felt strange at first. Then right. I opened one of the cabinets, the one Emily always insisted stay closed because open shelves look messy. I left it open. Then another. And another. No one was there to tell me otherwise. I moved to the coffee machine, the expensive one I was never allowed to use because, according to her, I'd break it somehow. I studied it for a moment, then pressed a button. It hummed to life. A small thing, but it made me smile. I made myself a cup and sat at the dining table, the good one, the one I was never supposed to use unless there were guests. I spread my papers out across it, taking up space without thinking about it. For 3 years, I had lived like a guest in a house that legally belonged to me. That realization didn't make me angry anymore. It made me aware of how much I had given away without noticing, aware of how easily people accept the version of you that benefits them most. My phone started ringing. I didn't need to look at it to know who it was. It rang again, and again. Eventually, I picked it up. "Catherine, what did you do?" Emily's voice came through immediately, sharp and panicked. "Daniel is freaking out. We had to go to your ex's place, and this is insane. You made your point, okay? We get it." "No," I said calmly. "You don't." A pause. "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means you think this is about teaching you a lesson," I replied. "It's not." "Then what is it about?" she snapped. "It's about me not living like that anymore." Silence. Then frustration. "So, what? You're just cutting us off? Throwing us away?" The irony of that almost made me laugh. "I'm not throwing you away," I said. "I'm stepping out of a situation where I was being treated like I didn't matter." "You're overreacting," she said quickly. "We were stressed. We said things we didn't mean. People do that." "Do they?" I asked. "For 3 years." She didn't answer. I could hear movement on the other end. A door closing. Daniel's voice in the background, muffled and tense. "We said we're sorry," she continued, softer now. "What more do you want?" That question again. The same one she always asked when things got uncomfortable. As if apologies were currency. As if saying the word fixed everything. "I want you to understand," I said. "I do understand," she insisted.
No, iraplia.
"You understand that you're in a difficult situation. That's not the same thing." Another pause. Longer this time. "What are we supposed to do?" she asked finally. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But you'll figure it out." "That's it," she said, disbelief creeping back in. "After everything?" "Yes," I said. She hung up. I stared at the phone for a moment, then set it down. It didn't ring again right away. Instead, the silence returned. And this time, it felt even better. The next few days passed in a way I hadn't experienced in years. Slowly, on my terms, I moved my things out of the small back room into the master bedroom without asking anyone for permission. I opened curtains that had stayed closed for months because they didn't match Emily's style. I rearranged furniture. Not carefully, not cautiously, but freely. The house began to feel alive again. Or maybe I did. I found boxes tucked away in closets, my things. Photos, books, small pieces of my life that had quietly disappeared over time because they didn't fit anymore. I brought them out, placed them where I wanted, not where they were allowed. I cooked meals I actually wanted to eat, played music while I cleaned, sat in the living room in the middle of the day without feeling like I was in someone else's space. It wasn't dramatic, but it was powerful. The phone calls came back eventually. First Emily again, then Daniel, then other family members. My sister called. "Catherine, what's going on?" she asked carefully. Emily told me everything, And this sounds serious. It is, I said. But they're your family, she added. You can't just put them out like that. I leaned back in my chair. Where were you? I asked calmly, when I was living there for 3 years feeling like I didn't belong? She hesitated. That's different, she said.
No, irraplia.
It's not. Another silence. You're being harsh, she said finally. I'm being clear, I corrected. That conversation ended the same way the others did. Discomfort. Silence. Distance. And I realized something then. None of them had noticed before. Not really. Not how I was treated. Not how I had slowly disappeared inside that house. But the moment I stopped accepting it, that was when it became a problem. I unplugged the phone that evening. I didn't need the noise. A few days later, I did something I hadn't done in years. I invited someone over. Mrs. Carter from next door. We had exchanged polite smiles for a long time, but never much more than that. Emily never liked having people over unless they fit into her world. Are you sure? Mrs. Carter asked when I called. I don't want to intrude. You're not intruding, I said. I'd like the company. She came that evening, bringing a small dessert and a warm, curious smile. We sat at the dining table, the real one, and talked about nothing important and everything. By the end of the night, the house felt warmer, not because of the lights, but because it was finally being used the way a home should be. Your place feels different, she said as she looked around. In a good way. I smiled. It is. That night, I sat alone again, but it didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. I thought about Emily, about Daniel, about everything that had happened. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to fix it. Didn't feel responsible for making things right. Because I finally understood something I should have learned a long time ago. Love doesn't mean disappearing for someone else. And family doesn't mean accepting whatever they decide to give you. Sometimes it means walking away and letting them decide if they're willing to meet you where you stand. I looked around my living room, my space, my choices, my life, and let out a slow breath. For the first time in years, I felt like myself again. 3 weeks passed before I saw Daniel again. Not because I reached out, and not because Emily tried to arrange it. He came on his own. I was in the front garden that afternoon, trimming the roses I had planted years ago, but never really had time to enjoy. The weather was mild, the kind that makes everything feel slower, quieter. I didn't expect anything unusual, so when I heard a car door close, I didn't even look up at first. But then I heard footsteps, hesitant ones. I turned. Daniel was standing by the gate. He looked different. Not dramatically, not in a way that would catch someone else's attention, but I saw it immediately. His shoulders were slightly hunched, his usual confidence replaced by something more uncertain. His clothes were wrinkled, like they hadn't been properly cared for, and there were dark circles under his eyes. For the first time in a long time, he didn't look like a boy who had everything handed to him. He looked like someone who had lost something.
Hi, he said.
Not, Grandma. Just
Eat.
Hello, Daniel, I replied. I didn't smile. I didn't move closer. I just stood there, waiting. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, glancing briefly at the house before looking back at me. Can I come in? He asked. I considered it for a moment, then nodded. We walked inside in silence. He moved slower than usual, like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to be there. That alone told me more than anything he could have said. I gestured toward the kitchen.
Seat. He sat.
I remained standing for a second longer before taking the chair across from him. The same table. The same place where everything had changed. I came to say sorry, he said quickly, like he needed to get the words out before he lost the courage. I didn't respond right away. I watched him. Really watched him. Sorry for what? I asked. He blinked, clearly not expecting the question. For what I said, he replied, about you not being my real grandma, and everything else. Everything else? I repeated. He swallowed. For being rude, for ignoring you, for acting like you didn't matter. Better, but still surface level. Why? I asked. That stopped him. What do you mean? Why were you like that? I clarified. What made you think it was acceptable? He looked down at his hands. I don't know, he muttered at first. I waited. Silence has a way of making people think deeper than they want to. Finally, he spoke again. I guess that just became normal, he admitted. Mom always talked like you were just there, like you weren't really part of things. There it was.
Honest.
Uncomfortable.
Real.
And you followed her lead, I said. He nodded.
Yeah.
Another pause. I didn't think about how it made you feel, he added quietly. I just cared about what my friends thought, about not being embarrassed. I leaned back slightly. And now? I asked. He hesitated again, but not for as long. Now I get it, he said. At least, I think I do. I raised an eyebrow. What changed? He let out a small breath. Everything, he said. Living with my dad, it's not the same. Not even close. I didn't react, but I listened. There's no structure, he continued. No one's really paying attention. Mom's stressed all the time, they argue a lot, and it's just different. Different. That word again. I miss it here, he admitted. I tilted my head slightly. You miss the house? I asked. He shook his head. No, he said. I mean, yeah, but not just that. He looked up at me. I miss you. That hung in the air. Simple, but heavy. I didn't respond immediately, because I needed to know something first. What exactly do you miss? I asked. He frowned slightly, thinking. Talking to you, he said after a moment. You actually listened. You didn't just tell me what to do or get annoyed when I asked questions. He paused. And the way things felt here, he added. Like stable. I nodded slowly. And how did you repay that stability? I asked. He winced. By messing it up, he said. That's one way to put it. He looked down again. I was selfish, he said. I cared more about looking cool than about you. That was closer. Still not perfect, but closer. I leaned forward slightly. Daniel, I said, do you understand that an apology doesn't fix what happened? He nodded. Yeah. Do you understand that trust isn't something you just get back because you asked for it? Yes. And do you understand, I continued, that if anything changes between us, it won't be because you said sorry today? He looked up. It'll be because of what I do after, he finished. I held his gaze for a moment, then nodded once. Good. Relief flickered across his face, but I didn't let it settle. What do you want? I asked. He hesitated again, then more carefully this time. I want a chance, he said. Not everything back. Just a chance to do it right. I studied him. There was no arrogance in his voice now.
No entitlement.
Just uncertainty. And something else. Effort. Your mother doesn't know you're here, does she? I asked.
He shook his head. No.
Why not? Because she still thinks this is about you being mad, he said. And I don't think she'd understand this.
Smart.
I leaned back again. All right, I said. His eyes widened slightly. Really? Don't get ahead of yourself, I replied. This isn't forgiveness. And it's not a reset. He nodded quickly. I know. This is observation. I continued. We start small. You show me over time that you actually understand what went wrong. I can do that, he said. We'll see, I replied. Another silence. But this one wasn't heavy. Just cautious. Can I still come by sometimes? he asked after a moment. That depends, I said. On what? On consistency, I answered. Not effort for a day. Not words. Actions. Repeated. He nodded again. Okay. I stood up. So, I said, if you're here, you might as well make yourself useful. He blinked. What do you mean? I gestured toward the garden. The roses don't trim themselves.
For a second, he just stared at me. Then, slowly, a small smile appeared.
Yeah, he said, standing up. Okay. We went outside together. And for the first time in a long time, the silence between us wasn't filled with distance. It was being rebuilt. Carefully. Step by step. 6 months can change a person. Not completely. Not magically. But enough to make you notice. By the time autumn settled in, the house felt fully mine, not just legally, not just physically, but emotionally. Every room carried my presence now. The furniture was where I wanted it, the light filled the space the way I liked, and most importantly, I no longer felt like I had to justify my existence inside my own walls. Daniel had kept coming. At first, once a week. Then more often. Always consistent. Always respectful. That was the key difference. He didn't walk in like he belonged anymore. He waited, knocked, asked. At first, it felt strange to see him like that, almost like the roles had reversed in some way. But over time, I understood that it wasn't about distance. It was about awareness. He was learning, and I could see it in the smallest things. The way he listened when I spoke instead of interrupting. The way he helped without being asked. The way he didn't hide our relationship anymore. One afternoon, he came over straight from school, dropping his bag by the door and heading into the kitchen like it was the most natural thing in the world, but still pausing just enough to look at me first. Is it okay if I'm here for a bit? He asked. I nodded. Of course. That balance, comfort with respect, was something he hadn't understood before. Now he was learning it. We spent a lot of time outside. The garden had become our routine. It started with small tasks, watering plants, trimming hedges, clearing leaves, but it turned into something more. Conversations happened easier when our hands were busy. Less pressure. Less intensity. Do you ever regret it? He asked once while we were working. Regret what? I replied. Kicking us out, he said. I paused, considering the question. No, I said honestly. I regret waiting so long to stand up for myself. He nodded slowly, like he expected that answer. I deserved it, he said after a moment. That's not the point, I replied. This wasn't about punishment. It was about change. He didn't argue. That was another difference. Before, he would have pushed back, defended himself, minimized things. Now, he listened and thought. His school performance changed too. He started bringing his assignments with him, asking for help, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. His grades improved steadily, and for the first time in a long time, I saw genuine pride in him. I got an A, he said one afternoon, holding up a paper like it was something rare. It's not rare, I said. You're capable of it. You just didn't care before. He smiled slightly. Yeah, he admitted. I guess I didn't. But now he did. Not just about school. About himself. About how he treated people. We set boundaries early on and I didn't bend them. Respect wasn't optional. Honesty wasn't optional. And most importantly, consistency wasn't optional. He understood that if he slipped back into old behavior, everything we were rebuilding could disappear just as quickly as it started. And for the first time, he took that seriously. Emily, on the other hand, stayed distant. Not completely gone, but not present either. She called a few times at the beginning, apologies, explanations, promises, but they all sounded the same. Words without depth. I said I'm sorry, she told me during one call, frustration creeping into her voice. What more do you want from me? I want you to understand why you're sorry, I replied. I do understand, she insisted. No, I said calmly. You understand that things didn't go your way. That's not the same thing. That conversation ended like the others, with tension and silence. After that, she stopped calling as often. Part of me wondered if she had given up. Another part of me knew better. She wasn't someone who gave up easily, but she was someone who avoided looking too closely at herself. And that was something I couldn't fix for her.
I had spent too many years trying.
One evening, Daniel stayed later than usual. We had cooked dinner together, something simple, nothing special, but the kind of meal that felt right. He helped clean up without being asked, drying dishes while I put them away. You know, he said, it's weird. What is? I asked. This feels more like home now than before, he admitted. I paused. Why do you think that is? I asked. He thought for a moment. Because it's real, he said finally. There's no pretending. That answer stayed with me. Because he was right. Before, everything had been built on an illusion. On roles. On expectations that weren't spoken but were always there. Now, there was none of that. Just truth. And boundaries.
And choice.
A week later, he came over with something in his hand. A letter. What's that? I asked. Application, he said. For a summer program. I took it from him, scanning the page. It was a good opportunity. Challenging. Competitive. You're applying for this? I asked.
Yeah, he said.
I mean, if you think I should. I looked up at him. Do you want to? I asked. He hesitated, then nodded.
Yeah.
Then apply, I said. Not because I think you should, because you want to. He smiled. A real one, not the forced, careless grin I used to see. Something quieter, more grounded. Okay, he said. He paused for a second. Can I put you as my emergency contact? He asked. The question caught me off guard. Not because of what it meant legally, but because of what it meant emotionally. For real? I asked. Yeah, he said. I mean, you're the one I trust. That landed deeper than anything else he had said. Of course, I replied. And I meant it. Later that night, after he left, I sat alone in the living room. The house was quiet again, but it didn't feel empty. It felt complete. Not because everything was perfect, not because everything was fixed, but because I wasn't losing myself anymore. For so long, I believed that being a good mother meant giving everything.
Time.
Energy.
Dignity.
I thought love meant endurance. That if I just stayed patient, stayed kind, stayed quiet, things would work themselves out. But they didn't. Because love without respect isn't love. It's obligation. And obligation, over time, turns into resentment. I had lived inside that cycle for years without realizing it. Now I saw it clearly, and I refused to go back. I didn't know what would happen with Emily, whether she would change, whether she would ever understand. But for the first time, I wasn't waiting for it. I wasn't hoping for it. I was simply living. And if she wanted to be part of that life again, she would have to meet me where I stood. Not where I used to be, not where she expected me to stay, but where I had chosen to stand. I turned off the lights and headed to bed, the quiet of the house settling around me like something familiar and safe. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was surviving. I felt like I was in control, and that made all the difference. I didn't expect to see Emily again. Not so soon. Not like that. It was late evening, the kind of quiet hour when the house settles into itself, and everything feels still. I had just finished making tea, and was about to sit down when the doorbell rang. For a moment, I didn't move. I wasn't expecting anyone. Daniel had been there earlier that week, and he always told me in advance now. The few neighbors I had grown closer to usually called before coming by. So I stood there, listening to the silence after the bell. Then it rang again. I walked to the door slowly and opened it. Emily stood on the porch, but not the Emily I remembered, not the version I had lived with for 3 years. She looked smaller somehow, not physically, but in the way she carried herself. Her posture wasn't rigid with control. Her expression wasn't guarded or defensive. Her hair was pulled back simply, no effort to present a perfect image. And for the first time in a long time, she wasn't trying to dominate the space just by standing in it. "Catherine," she said quietly. "Not, Mom. Not yet." "Emily," I replied. We stood there for a moment, the space between us filled with everything we hadn't said. "Can we talk?" she asked. I studied her face. There was no urgency in her tone, no demand, just a question. I stepped aside.
"Come in."
She walked in slowly, her eyes moving around the room as if she were seeing it for the first time. "It looks different," she said. "It is," I replied. She nodded. "It feels warmer." I didn't respond. We sat in the living room across from each other. No table between us this time.
No barrier.
Just distance. She took a breath, then another, like she was steadying herself. "I've been going to therapy," she said. That surprised me, not because therapy was unusual, but because she had always dismissed it. "What made you decide to do that?" I asked. "Daniel," she said simply. I waited. "He asked me why I'm always angry," she continued. "Why I say things I don't mean." And I realized I didn't have an answer. Her voice didn't shake, but it wasn't strong either. It was honest. "My therapist asked me something I didn't expect," she said. "She asked me who I am when I'm not in control." I leaned back slightly. "And?" I asked. Emily looked down at her hands. "I didn't know," she admitted. "And that scared me more than anything." Silence settled between us. But it wasn't uncomfortable, just real. "I've spent so much time trying to feel like I'm not failing," she continued. "Trying to prove that I can handle everything on my own, that I don't need help, that I'm not weak." Her fingers tightened slightly. "And when you came in and actually helped me," she added, "it made me feel like I had already failed." I watched her carefully.
No excuses. No shifting blame.
Just explanation. "So instead of dealing with that feeling," she said, "I flipped it. I told myself you were the one who needed me, that you were the problem, that I was doing you a favor." There it was, the truth. Uncomfortable, but clear. "And I built everything around that idea," she continued. "Even when I knew, deep down, it wasn't true." I didn't interrupt. I wanted to hear all of it. "I let Daniel see that," she said quietly. "I taught him that it was okay to treat you that way, that you didn't matter as much as we did." Her voice cracked slightly then, just enough to show that it wasn't easy to say. "That's on me," she added. I nodded once. "Yes," I said.
It is. She didn't argue.
That alone told me more than anything else. "I'm not here to ask you to fix anything," she said after a moment, "or to go back to how things were."
Good.
Because that wasn't an option. "I know I can't undo what I did," she continued. "And I know saying sorry doesn't change it." Another pause. "But I needed you to know that I understand now," she said. "Not just that I hurt you."
But how?
"And why?" I studied her face, looking for signs, for patterns, for anything that felt like the past. But I didn't see it, not clearly. "What do you want from me?" I asked. She hesitated, then shook her head. "Nothing," she said. The word hung in the air. Unexpected. "I don't want anything from you," she repeated. "Not a place to stay, not support, not even forgiveness." I raised an eyebrow slightly. "Then why are you here?" I asked. She took a slow breath. "Because you deserve to hear the truth," she said. even if it doesn't change anything. That answer mattered. More than she probably realized. She stood up slowly. I won't take up your time, she said. I just needed to say that. She turned toward the door. And for a moment I almost let her go. It would have been easier.
Cleaner.
Safer. But something in me shifted. Not softness. Not weakness. Just choice. Emily. She stopped. Turn back. Yes. This doesn't fix anything, I said. I know, she replied. And it doesn't mean things go back to how they were. I don't want that, she said. I believed her. Or at least, I believed that she believed it. If anything changes between us, I continued, it will be slow. She nodded. Okay. It will be on my terms. I understand. And it will depend on what you do next, I added. Not what you say today. She held my gaze. I'm willing to do that, she said. Another pause. Then I nodded once. Call me next week, I said. Not an invitation. Not a promise. Just a possibility. Her eyes softened slightly. Okay, she said again. She opened the door. Stepped outside. Then hesitated. Thank you, she added quietly. And then she left. I closed the door slowly and leaned against it for a moment. Not overwhelmed. Not emotional. Just thoughtful. The house was quiet again. But it felt different now. Not because something had been resolved, but because something had shifted. Inside me, I walked back into the living room and sat down, letting the silence settle around me. For years, I had believed that love meant staying, enduring, accepting. But now I understood something I hadn't before. Love isn't proven by how much you tolerate. It's proven by what you require. Respect,
Honesty.
reciprocity. Without those, it's not love. It's imbalance. And I had lived in that imbalance for too long. Now I didn't have to. Whether Emily changed or not, whether things improved or stayed distant, I would be fine. Because I wasn't waiting anymore. I wasn't hoping for someone else to recognize my worth. I already had. I looked around the room, the photos, the light, the space that finally felt like mine, and allowed myself a small, quiet smile. Not because everything was perfect, but because it was mine, my life, my choices, my boundaries. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough.